Hey Monarchs, welcome back to history class, sort of. I'm going to go through the warm-up, through the notes, and as well as through some of the answers for the exit ticket today. And then make sure that you go through this whole presentation independently if you don't go through it with me. All right, so warm-up. When did World War II begin? If you remember, it began in 1939, September 1st. At least remember the year, 1939, when Hitler invaded Poland. The Blitzkrieg, or the Lightning War, is the way the Nazis invaded or attacked other countries. And it had 3 steps. The first step was air attacks. Second step were tanks. And the third step were foot soldiers. Inflation is a monetary term. It's when money loses its value. So you print more and more money, like Germany was during the Depression, which means that the money loses its value. It's not as strong as it once was, like $1 is now worth only a penny, that kind of thing. The Weimar Republic was the temporary government set up in Germany after World War I. It's the government that the Nazis eventually to take over and establish the Third Reich, or the Nazi Germany. Name 2 ways Germany was affected by the Depression. This is already listed here, but remember: unemployment, starvation, lost savings, banks started failing. Basically, people started getting really desperate. And what anti-Semitic? Remember, that means to be anti-Jewish, or to be against Jewish people, discriminatory towards them. Okay, so some key terms for today. A henchman. Think about this like supervillains have their henchmen. A henchman is a faithful follower and supporter, especially those prepared to engage in crime or dishonest practice for a leader. So if I had my own henchmen, they would be people that would go off and do bad things for me. Today you're going to do a reading on Hitler's henchmen. That's why we're front-loading this term. The henchmen, another word for them, could be like partners in crime, or stooges, basically people that have to follow your orders. All right, so Nazi propaganda. Let's get into the notes. The Nazis, under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, from 1889 to 1945. Remember, the Nazis are the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party. Nazi stands for National, which is like the German for national. Grew into a mass movement and ruled Germany through totalitarian means from 1933 to 1945. 33 being when Hitler became chancellor. Propaganda, if you remember from our World War I unit, is information used to influence people's opinions. So think about like any sort of image that's trying to change what you think about something. Think about like if you saw the images from World War I that were telling people to buy war bonds, or telling people that they needed to support the troops by saving money, or by encouraging their husbands and boyfriends and brothers to go to war. All right, we're going to learn about some of Hitler's henchmen here. This is Joseph Goebbels, or Goebbels. It's pronounced Goebbels in German. There's like a silent R in there. I don't know why. It just is. So Goebbels had control over all news media. So he controlled news media like the news, newspapers, art, and public information in Germany. He delivered emotional speeches to try to motivate and mobilize the German. He was named in Hitler's final will as the successor to Hitler, or the Führer, which is German for leader. So he's basically Hitler's right-hand man. He would like spread all the disinformation to people, try to control the news about what types of news, what types of facts people were allowed to know. Think about this in terms of like when we talk about like North Korea and how they would control people's news flow. He would be controlling that as well. So examples of propaganda that Goebbels would have controlled is like youthful idealism. This says German students fight for Hitler and nation. You can see they look like these Aryan white supremacists, like white skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. Gee, shucks, we're going to go fight for Nazis. Basically saying that like everyone is fighting for the Führer, fighting for Germany. This one says Jugend dient dem Führer, which means youth serves the Führer. And again, you can see right here the children kind of dress up. The Nazis actually had a group called the Hitler Youth, which were basically like Nazi Boy Scouts. If you've seen the movie Jojo Rabbit, it kind of talks about this directly. Okay, so 2 purposes of Nazi propaganda. 1, to create a positive image of Hitler and the Nazi Party. 2, to create a negative view of those considered to be enemies, particularly Jews. this is the poster we looked at before as well, which says "Long Live Germany." And again, Hitler is portrayed as very like angelic figure. There's like light shining on him. He's like looks like a savior, right? Instead of the terrible person he really was. Okay, so quick check for understanding. If you don't know the answers to these, you should pause, rewind, and go back or look at the presentation on your own later. You need to know what a henchman is. Jumping ahead. Who was Joseph Goebbels, and what are the two purposes of Nazi propaganda? Make sure you know those. We have a test coming up on Friday, tomorrow. Okay. Hitler's propaganda methods. He would present simple themes in a repetitive manner. He would appeal to emotion rather than intellect. He would appeal to the masses, most people, instead of like, so he'd try to appeal to like the average person, and he's trying to get them like emotionally. He's trying to make sure that they're listening with their feelings and not with their brains, right? He'd focus mainly on one enemy. He claims that this enemy is at the root of all problems. Think about how, like, in the United States today, a lot of people on the Republican Party or in the conservative side of government have started talking about how immigration is a big problem and blaming immigrants for a lot of the country's problems. Okay. Forms of propaganda used in Nazi Germany. Images such as posters, books, newspapers, and illustrations. Spoken word, speeches, radio broadcasts, songs, slogans. Printed word, newspapers, articles, school curriculum. So, like, in school, they'd be telling you propaganda. So, like, anti-Jewish propaganda, pro-German propaganda. And then dramatic, they would do lots of films. Hitler was a big film buff. He loved movies. Or rallies, like coming together and, like, listening to your leader speak and listening to him say these things. Note also is that there were a lot of American Nazi sympathizers, like Americans who sympathized with the Nazis during World War II. Not like the majority of public, but there were Nazis not just in Germany, but also in America that were kind of like German immigrants to the United States that were kind of taking on these ideas and really like thought they resonated with them. Okay, goals of pro-Nazi propaganda. They want to portray Hitler and the Nazi Party as the saviors of Germany and to connect the Nazis to a positive vision of Germany's future. These are some key terms that you need to know for the exit ticket, and they're at the bottom of your worksheet as well. Let's go over them real quick. Sorry, hit the wrong key. Discrimination. So you need to know what it means to discriminate. Actions based on prejudice or racist beliefs that result in unfair treatment. So if you're discriminating against someone, you're treating them wrong based on how you see them, not on who they actually are. Stereotypes, a belief often negative about individual characteristics generalized to all people within that group. So if you believe that all white people do blank, or all African Americans do blank, or all Mexicans do blank, or all etc., that's a stereotype, because not every one person or not everyone in one group is exactly the same, correct? So that's a stereotype. And then a scapegoat, and I'm cutting this off a little bit, but it is on your worksheet. It says an individual or group unfairly blamed for problems not their making. So, for example, in Nazi Germany, the Jews were considered a scapegoat. So Jewish people were scapegoated by the German government. They blamed them for everything. And that's how these... blame them for everything, and then that's how you scapegoat someone. You're blaming somebody else for your problems. All right, so discussion, real quick, you can look right here. These are the answers for the worksheet at the bottom. If you want to pause and try to answer them yourself, I would do so. For example, a male boss never gives women important work. That would be discrimination. He's not treating men and women the same in the workplace. The belief that all white people are racist, that's a stereotype, right? Not all white people are racist. Immigrants are the reason why the U.S. is in debt. That would be scapegoating people. Again, scapegoating immigrants. And blaming them for the United States problems. Nazis blame Jews for their economic problems after World War I. Again, a scapegoat. You're blaming another group. That's what it means to scapegoat. Black students are punished more harshly than white students for the same offense. That would be an example of discrimination. The black students are not being treated the way they should be treated because they're being treated more harshly than white students. All Latinos are criminal and rapists. So taking that Trump quote where he blames, says Mexico is sending rapists and criminals. That's a stereotype, right? Again, you're blaming one group of people for like a small portion of a population, right? You can't just like take a whole race of people, a whole group of people, and blame them for what one criminal has done or something like that. The Muslim ban is needed due to recent terrorist attacks. That would be one, a scapegoat, because you're blaming all Muslims for terrorism, and two, discrimination, because you're unfairly targeting all Muslims for based off of something that just like a group of Muslims did. Okay. African Americans were unable to attend school with white counterparts during the 1950s. That's an example of discrimination, not being treated the way they should be, not getting the same access to education as white people. And this is a stereotype that Asians are all good at math. Again, not 100% true. It's a stereotype. You're blaming, or not blaming, excuse me. You're saying something based off of, so you're blaming a whole group for something, or saying a whole group does one thing when it's not true. Everyone's different, right? Okay, those are the answers for today. Make sure you go through and do that worksheet, do the reading on Hitler's Henchmen. Have a great afternoon, Monarchs. Remember, you have an assessment tomorrow. It is an even week. So tomorrow you'll have your history test, which I will post. Have a great day.